Christian Parenting.
Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Thurling. I'm the Executive Director of Christian Parenting, a mom of 3, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today, and be given the space, resources, and encouragement you need to set aside perfection and grow into the perfectly imperfect parent God made you to be. So there is no doubt that this election season is contentious. We live in an information-saturated world where people are definitely not afraid to share their opinions, and filtering through all the information out there is so overwhelming, and then trying to figure out how to explain it all to your kids is daunting. And that is why Christian Parenting created Politics Simplified. Politics Simplified is a free digital download giving families faith-based guidance for the political season. The resources included in this guide will help you get the answers to the questions that so many of us have. Questions like, how do I share my opinions with my kids while allowing them to establish their own? How do I teach my kids to talk about tough topics with respect, integrity, and compassion? What are the important issues for Christians to consider when voting, and how do I discern who to vote for? Politics Simplified is a collection of resources designed to help you understand a variety of topics, especially those that gain attention during the election season. To get your free download, you can go to christianparenting.org/store. If you are looking for practical ways to incorporate faith into your family's daily life, you do not want to miss this episode, because today I'm sitting down with my friend Christie Thomas, who is the author of Little Habits, Big Faith, among many other books. But we are talking today about the power of small habits and building a strong faith foundation in our kids. And I know that if you're listening to this podcast and following Christian parenting, that's probably important to you. I think right now we hear about habits quite a bit, and I absolutely love the way Christie takes habit science and applies it to discipling our kids. We cover a lot of things in this episode, like the importance of starting with tiny habits and gradually growing in faith as a family, finding moments in your daily routine that can be redeemed for spiritual growth, and ideas for incorporating small faith habits, including practicing Bible memory verses, praying blessings, and listening to worship music. I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. You're going to be encouraged and walk away with really practical ideas to get discipling your kids today. Enjoy. Hi, Christie. Welcome back to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, it is so fun. You were on last time talking about the Holy Spirit, and now we get to talk about building faith habits and teaching your kids about Jesus, and I'm just really, really excited to have you back. We've been friends for a while. Like, how long have we known each other? A few years. Like, pre-COVID, we were internet friends.
I stalked you on your Raising Prayerful Kids account and then connected that way.
Yeah, so it's been so fun to see kind of where God has led us in our ministry journey. So This is great. Thank you for joining us again. For those of you who didn't hear my last podcast, let's do a little introduction. So can you tell us who you are? Tell us about your family, and then can you describe your family in one word or phrase that's different than thoughtful? Because we just went back to listen to what you said last time. Last time you said thoughtful. What do you have to say now?
All right. Well, I have 3 boys, and they're currently 15, 12, and 10. And I am currently homeschooling all 3 and about to launch into homeschool high school next year. So that'll be an interesting experience for all of us. I used to be a children's ministry director at my church. So I did that for more than 10 years, kind of took some time off in between. So the exact number of months is a little nebulous. My husband works for the public school board, so that was an interesting transition to homeschooling for him, being a longtime teacher and now a consultant with the school board. And I work as a homeschool mom, and I write online at Little Shoots Deep Roots, and I also write books. So sometimes people ask me, how do you do all that? And I think, actually, I don't really know, because I feel like I waste a lot of time and I spend a lot of time with my kids. So any book that is, in people's hands today is really because God made me sit my butt down and write it and helped me figure out the time for it.
You have to give us our word still.
How I would describe our family, I think a phrase this time is quiet, but one. So we have 4 introverts in our family and 1 extrovert, and he's our last. And the God knew that we really needed him in our family because we would probably never really talk. And I'd feel very lonely, I think, without our youngest child. He is extroverted and like in all the best ways and loves talking to people and loves talking to me. And so he is kind of the life of our family. And the other kids have great personalities too, but he's an extrovert among introverts. So just imagine that. And that's our family.
And God knew you needed him. And God also knew like when and how you were going to write all your books. And I just love that. But he cares about all those little things. And he like
Mm-hmm.
works it all together, which I just think is so cool. When you sit back and think, you're like, God knew that I had words I had to get out to the world. God knew that I had this child that I needed. My family needed, his siblings needed. Like that's just so cool. I like that.
He's just so enthusiastic about life and about everything. And like you said, God knew we needed him so much in our lives. Our
Yeah.
family would be very different. We would all be just kind of sitting there reading our individual books. He's like, "You want to play a game? You want to come jump on the trampoline? You want to do this? You want to do that?" And it's great. I love it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, and then I usually also ask what's one thing you want every parent to know, but you've already answered that too. So, I thought just to mix things up a little bit, I would just ask what's like one thing that you're learning about parenting right now? As you're about to have a high schooler and enter a totally different phase of parenting. What are you learning?
What I'm learning is that teenagers can be very fun. I am
Mm,
really loving having a teenager, and my middle son is going to be a teenager in another month, and I I'm really loving this stage. Like I loved having preschoolers. I loved having babies more than I expected that I would. I loved having elementary kids, and now I'm loving having teenagers. And for a long time, I was really afraid of that, of having teenagers. I thought I'm not going to know how to connect with them. But when it's your own kid and you've known them since birth, it is so fun. He's such a funny guy, and I love getting to see how God is moving in his heart and how he's growing up and becoming more of who God made him to be. It's fantastic.
I feel like more people are talking about the positives of teenagers now. Maybe it's just who I'm following since my oldest is a tween. He's not quite a teen, but he'll be there soon. So maybe it's just who I'm following, but like people are talking so positively about teens. And I love that. It's just like a fun stage. It doesn't have to be so scary.
No, and if you have a good relationship with them and are willing to kind of ride out those moments when it's not a good relationship, I think
Right.
it can be fantastic. They're so smart, they're so witty, they ask so many questions, they have friends of their own and interests of their own. You're like, wow, why are you interested in that? Okay, let me learn about that. So I think if you go in with a curious, inquisitive mindset that you're going to learn a lot through this stage, then it can be pretty fantastic. Now, granted, my oldest is only 15, so maybe when we get to the dating stage, it maybe it'll be bad. I don't know,
I
but
doubt
right
it'll
now
be
it's been pretty good.
bad. It's just different. Every stage is so different. Like it's hard for me to miss the little years because while I loved them and we had a lot of fun, and like I look back at pictures of them, oh my gosh, I just looked back at an old photo the other day and I was like, they're so cute and sweet and like round, and they were so cute. And like I miss that, but I'm like, but I love who they are now. Like I can't miss that too much when they're so awesome right now.
Mhm.
So I
Exactly.
imagine that they're going to continue to be awesome.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's easy for us to think back with like so much nostalgia, but like it was not perfect back then either.
Oh
I can look back
no.
and think, oh, my kids were so perfect and round when they were little. But then I remember how tired I was.
Mhm.
So, right, every stage is great. Let's not be
Yeah.
afraid of the next stage.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Okay, let's switch gears. Talk about your book. Talk about faith formation because this is something that we are both just so passionate about. I think it's what connected us in the first place. So, your newest book is Little Habits, Big Faith. And I would say that this is more than a book to you. This is like your real life and something that you are passionate about for a reason. And you've been working on it for a really long time, had it on your heart. I mean, this is like what you really do with your family. This is your real life written
Yep.
in words. So tell us a little bit about what led you to write it, about your heart behind it, and what this book is.
It's really the culmination of my life experience. And I don't actually talk a lot about my own life in the book because I didn't want people to think, oh, to disciple properly, I have to disciple like Christie.
Mm.
But I wanted to show that there's power in the little things that we do every day. So I started discovering way back when I was a like before I even had a child, the power of these little habits, these little faith habits. I started teaching our families in our church about blessing your child. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just following a curriculum. I read through the lesson and that was it. And then a year or two later, I started asking the parents, so did you even do that? Like, did you remember to do it? And most parents said, yeah, it was so easy that our kids loved doing it. And we really couldn't not do it because our kids were like, you have to bless me tonight. And it started making these remarkable changes in their lives. And so as they started telling me these stories, I started thinking, there is something that God is doing here, and I don't quite know what. So it took many more years for me to figure out what it was that God was doing, but he was taking something the size of a mustard seed and turning it into this flourishing tree. You know how Jesus says, the mustard seed is the smallest of all your seeds. And yet when it grows, it becomes this huge tree and the birds make their nests in it. And that is exactly what was happening through this little tiny thing. And it's not just that one little tiny thing of praying a nighttime blessing over your child. There were other little tiny things that were making big differences too. So really, the book came out of me seeing these things happening in my own family and seeing the changes that were happening in my family because of little tiny things that I was doing. And then seeing it in other families and then starting to kind of experiment on other families. Like, can I teach you how to do this? And then them saying, yeah, this was so easy. I couldn't not do it. It was just so absurdly easy. And then them telling me months later, we're still doing this. And this is how my family is changing. So really, it is the accumulation of about 15 years of experience in the church and with my family and with the other families that have, my readers and the people that I've coached. And God is so good. And I love the things that he's doing. I love what he does through little things. Like sometimes we look at the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. This little boy who brings his 5 loaves and his 2 fish to Jesus, and Jesus makes it feed this huge crowd. And we think, wow, I wish God would do stuff like that today. He does. He just, maybe not necessarily with food, although I have heard stories where God did do that with food in modern times. But he does that with all the little things in our lives that we do consistently, regularly, and it just becomes who we are. And God takes those little things and he's like, great, thanks for giving me your little. I'm going to turn it into a lot.
Oh, I love that. Okay, let's talk about that right there. So you talk about like a faith growth cycle, like starting with a seed. Like, let's talk about how we start with a seed and then we continue to grow. Because I think sometimes we have too many or too few expectations on our kids when we're teaching them about Jesus. Like, we'll get super excited and we want them to understand this like big concept and all of a sudden just have this basically grown up faith when they're little. Or we're like, oh no, they can't do that. They're not ready for that. So tell us about how this cycle works and how kids develop a lasting faith.
For sure. So the cycle, you can kind of see it as 2 ways. The most kind of general way was what you were just talking about, like when you're planting seeds of faith in your children, remember that it's kind of like gardening or growing an oak tree. I have an oak tree that I planted in my yard like 3 years ago, and it's still about 6 inches tall. Growth is slow, and you're not going to see it for a long time. For the most part, you may see some, but for the most part, you're not going to see fruit for a long time. And that's okay. The actual growth cycle that I talk about is actually a method for starting new faith habits in your family. So say you're looking at your family and you're like, wow, we really need more of this in our lives, but where do I even start? So in the seed stage, we take that question and we say, why do I even want to do this? Is it just because the people around me are doing this? Is this because my children's pastor is saying, you need to disciple your own kids? Is it because my pastor's telling me? Or is it because I know deep down in my heart that I have something special with God and I want my kids to experience that too? So when you know why you want to do this, it's going to be a lot easier. So it takes a little bit of self-investigation because we can't do it out of the wrong motivations. I feel like a lot of times we disciple out of this sense of fear that our kids are going to walk on the wrong path. Or, I mean, I talk to any Christian parent right now and they're going to tell you what they're afraid of their kids hearing or doing or seeing. That is the wrong motivation for sharing Christ with our kids, in my opinion. And I have an entire chapter about that actually in the book about why fear doesn't lead to good results. But anyway, so we start in the seed stage and we think through, why do we want to do this? And we also think through what's actually keeping me from doing this right now. Like, what are my reasons for not doing this right now? Am I just really busy? Are my kids too little or too big? Or what things am I telling myself that are the reasons that it's not working or I'm not doing this? So once you kind of have thought through those things and you've isolated either the lies or the excuses or just the real reasons why you're not doing this with your kids, then you can move on to the next stage. And that's the sprout stage. So if I were to go out into the garden, I wouldn't just take a bunch of seeds and throw them. Although I know we always have this image of the parable of the sower, like he just like hucking seed everywhere. That's not actually how you garden. you dig a hole, or even in a farm, right? You dig those trenches and you put the seeds in, you close them up and you water them. Like you're doing things on purpose. So we want to do this on purpose. And we want it, if I just dump a bunch of seed into a hole in my garden, I'm going to have all this stuff grow up and go, what's this? What's the weed and what's the seed? And I don't even know. So instead, I want to plant it kind of, with a plan in mind. So science tells us that the best way to grow a habit is to start really, really little. And so for example, if I wanted to start, I wanted to become more healthy, I wanted to drink 8 cups of water a day, I would think, oh, that's my new habit, drinking 8 cups of water a day. But that's actually not little enough. So what I need to do is say, if I want to drink 8 cups of water a day, every time I walk into the kitchen, I'm going to get a glass of water. That's the way. The goal is actually drinking 8 cups of water a day. That's not the habit. The little way to actually get it into your day is to, every time you walk into the kitchen, you get a glass of water. So we can use that idea with spiritual formation habits too. When I want to start reading the Bible with my kids after supper, I think this is perfect. This would really work well with our family. I can't just pull out my big old Bible and start reading through 2 Thessalonians with them. I'm reading, okay, we're going to read a whole chapter of Isaiah. How long is that going to last? Okay, you start reading a chapter of Isaiah a day with your kids when you haven't been doing this before. How many days in a row are you going to do that?
Like 2.
I was thinking 1.
No, because you're going to be stubborn and try it the second day.
That's right. And then you're going to be like, well, this just really doesn't work for us. Nobody wants to read the Bible. Well, what if instead you just read 1 verse from Isaiah? You're like, I'm just going to read this 1 verse, guys. Hey, good, done. See you later. Go have your supper. And then maybe once you're remembering to do that on a regular basis, you say, read the verse. And then you say to your kids, so what do you think about that? Or why do you think that verse is in the Bible? Or what does that mean for us? And then after you start having those conversations with your kids, you say, let's pray through that verse together. So you can see how it first of all, starting it really tiny becomes a sustainable thing that you can actually do. And then you can grow it from there. So instead of starting with this big thing that becomes a big hairy deal and really feels impossible to put in your day, you just start with something tiny. I like to think about it like you have this big, heavy door. I don't know if you've ever seen like those big wooden doors on buildings, and it's firmly shut to something like reading the Bible as a family. Instead of trying to like kick it open, let's just crack it open. So we crack it open by doing like 1 verse a day, or starting to pray a biblical blessing over your child at bedtime, or a really super short devotional that takes like 20 seconds to read, just something really short. And over time, because you've cracked open that door, what happens when you've cracked open a huge, heavy door? It becomes quite a bit easier to open because it's not locked closed anymore, right? So all you have to do is lean on it gently and it opens more and more and more. And suddenly, before you know it, your entire family culture has changed and it's become something different and more flourishing. So this is getting kind of long. So there's the seed stage where we're thinking through, why am I doing this? What's been getting in my way so far? The sprout stage where we're learning how to take our habits, the desired habits that we have, and figure out what's actually going to work and how we can make it smaller so that it's sustainable. And then the third stage is once you actually get that into your life, sometimes those little faith habits that we have start to feel a little like, okay, well, I'm only reading 1 verse at supper. That feels a little like we could probably do a little more. So that's the rooted stage. And we actually do a little bit more. That's where we're adding prayer or we're adding questions. a discussion, or we are reading more than one verse at a time, or we're inviting our children to open up their own Bibles and read that verse so they can find the verse in scripture. There's so many ways that we can just slowly, again, everything is just slow, going deeper so that it's not. Okay, have you ever been in a car and you're in the back seat? You remember this when you're a kid and somebody turns a corner really fast? What happens to
Yes.
you?
You're like,
Whoa,
go
you
all
go
over. Yeah.
sliding off to the side, right? And you're like squishing your sibling and they're like, get off of me, right? So this is what happens when we try to do these really big changes in our life all at once. Everyone's like, oh, get off me. This doesn't work. I don't want to do this. But what happens if we're in that same car and it's turning around the curve very slowly? It's this huge curve. Within a few minutes, you're going a completely different direction, but you didn't even notice that you were turning. So the culture of your family completely changes if you take it slow and steady.
Why are so many dogs suffering from health issues? Actress Katherine Heigl, who's helped save over 16,000 dogs through her foundation, says she's seeing more issues with dogs' joints, odors, and health than ever before. And after doing a ton of research, she feels there's one place we can look to support any dog's health: their food. So she decided to create something she could actually feel good about feeding her dogs. It's called Superfood Complete. Superfood Complete is made with over 30 of the healthiest ingredients on the planet, including several superfoods vital to your dog's health. Badlands Ranch also sponsors the Jason Debus Heigl Foundation, which has helped rescue thousands of dogs and place them in loving homes. Dogs across America are trying this food and experiencing amazing health benefits. Go to badlandsranch.com/save50 and order right now to get up to 50% off your regular price order with a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you want your dog to experience all these incredible things, go to badlandsranch.com/save50 today.
Despite the unshakable Iowa Corn-Cyhawk rivalry, there is one thing Iowa State and University of Iowa fans can both agree on: getting hyped for Unleaded 88. It's cleaner burning and better for your engine, and it's cheaper than other fuel options, making Unleaded 88 the clear fuel choice. If Iowa Corn-Cyhawk rivals can agree on it, you know it's worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88, grown by Iowa corn farmers.
Yeah, I love that analogy because I do feel like if you jump into something too quickly, it is like your kids look at you like, oh, well, mom's on this kick or mom's on that kick, and just like ride it out and it'll pass again. But that's not what we want to do with Jesus. Jesus isn't just a kick or a phase we go through that we get excited about. Like we want it to change the culture of our homes. And I love the emphasis on start small. Like we just put so much pressure on ourselves to start big because we want to do it the way we see everyone else doing it on social media. And it's like, no, like if someone looks at you on social media and sees what you're doing with your kids, you've been doing it for how many years?
15 years.
Yeah. So if they have a 2-year-old and they're like, Christie's doing this and I can't do that with my 2-year-old. Well, yeah, it's because you've been parenting for 2 years and you've been doing this for 15. So like take it slow and it will build.
Exactly.
And you're doing it all perfectly, right?
Oh, yes. Let's not pretend that. It is definitely not perfect. There are many times when I'm like, I really should have done that differently. Or
could have done that again.
I totally forgot to do those things for the whole week or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, let's get super practical because I like concepts, but I want to give listeners something that they can do like today to disciple their kids, especially as we get ready for a new school year to begin, because we all know that's the parents' their new year. So maybe this is the time that you want to start doing something. So like, what are just a couple of the tiny habits? Because you've mentioned blessing your kids. That's like my personal favorite thing to do. I cannot speak to a group of moms without talking about blessing your kids. So love blessing your kids. You talk about doing a devotional that lasts 20 seconds. People are probably like, what are you talking about? How is that possible? So give us a few examples of tiny habits that we could start with tonight.
Okay. Well, before I give you like some really specific examples, I want you to step back and say, what are you already doing in your average day? Especially if you are starting your new school year, what are you already doing? Because you might want to do something like read that devotional or bless your child or whatever, but it doesn't mesh with if it doesn't mesh with something that you're already doing, it's not going to become a habit. It's not going to be sustainable for you. So first you think, what am I already doing in my average school day? Or my average day? Are you eating breakfast? Are you putting on backpacks? Are you driving to and from school, or maybe waiting for a bus? Are you packing a lunch? Are you driving to sports practice or waiting in the pickup line? Or if you're a homeschool parent, you're probably eating lunch together, eating a meal together. Maybe you're doing a read aloud together. In the evening, you're doing things like tucking your child in or running the bathwater or telling your child to take a shower. So there's lots of times in your day when you could be doing something, but don't pick all of them. Just say, okay, what am I already doing with my kids every day? And ask yourself, or ask God, really, how would you like to redeem this moment? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's toothbrushing. I heard this example once where somebody said, yeah, you can't redeem every moment of the day. I'm brushing my teeth with my kids. How can I turn that to be about Jesus? And she said, why don't you pray about it and see what God has to say about that? And lo and behold, a couple months later, they have this habit of writing Bible verses on sticky notes and reading them together while they're brushing their teeth, because that's what God had showed them would work best for them. So I will give you some examples, but they're not going to work for everybody. And you have to pick the right thing at the right time of day. So you could practice a Bible memory verse. If you find something that you're like, wow, I really just want my kids to know this verse so that they can have that in their hearts when they need it. I recommend writing it on a sticky note. Don't look for some like big fancy poster or something, because that's going to keep you from doing it. Just keep it really simple. Write it on a sticky note, write it on your hand. And then whatever time of day that you picked, say, for example, you're waiting for the bus, then just say, hey, let's practice this memory verse together. And let's try and remember to do this every day when we're waiting for the bus. So we're practicing this memory verse, and then you celebrate at the end of it. So there's this one mom that I was talking to, and she was like, I don't know what's going to motivate my sons to do this. And I said, how about you tell them, after we practice the memory verse, you get to give me the hardest high five that you can possibly give me. And she said, months later, that is still working for them. She probably has calluses on her hand now because they love just like walloping you with their hand. So they started practicing memory verses while they were waiting for the bus. And then after, they would get to give their mom the biggest high five. So the next time, starting the next year when they're waiting for the bus, you know what they're going to want to do? Mom, can we do that thing where we give you the high five? We practice the memory verse and we give you the really hard high five? Yeah, sure. I would love to do that.
That's a good one. I like that.
Bible memory is a really easy one to do, and it gets you meditating on a scripture, and you can do the same memory verse for 2 months if you want. There is no need to do one a week or, whatever the gurus say you should do. Prayer, you could pray. There's a mom that I know that her story is in my book, actually, where she started praying for her kids as they were putting on their backpacks. Just a really short prayer, God bless them throughout the day. And that has morphed into her kids praying, but that's not where it started. It started with her just saying a really simple prayer as her kids were putting on their backpacks for the day and sending them off with that prayer. And because it was as they were putting on their backpacks, now when they're putting on their backpacks, where are their hearts and their minds going to turn? To prayer, which is why I started with, you need to think of a specific thing that you're doing every day, because now, hopefully for their entire lives, when they're getting ready to walk out the door, they're going to be like, oh, I need to pray. God bless my day, or, whatever. Yeah. It could be deeper than that, but.
Well, it could be easy. That's when I bless my kids. I bless my kids when they walk out the door.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Because we already doing that. I was already saying goodbye, have a great day. So instead of just that, I was blessing them. And I talked to a mom once who was trying to pray with her little daughter before bed. And it just was like, she was so cranky, the daughter was. And then the mom also was, because everyone was cranky. So bedtime wasn't working. But I was like, so when is she happy? And she was like, in the bath. And so then they started in the bath together instead of right before bed. It was just like 20 minutes earlier in the bath. They're already doing it. Yeah.
Or I talked to a mom once. She didn't even know that this was something that I talked about, but she was just saying, whenever daddy goes to work, my little boys and I would get up on the couch and we pray for daddy as he's driving away. That's something that you can do with little ones. I love that. So they're just, whatever you're doing, wherever you're together, just pick one time and ask God, how do you want to redeem this? How do you want to turn our hearts towards you in this moment? And he's going to give you an idea. Maybe a devotional is the right thing. Maybe that's too complicated, because to do a devotional, you need a book. Maybe Bible memory is the right thing. Maybe praying a blessing is the right thing. Maybe listening to worship music is the right thing. I know a lot of parents talk about after school restraint collapse. I don't know if you've experienced this, but after school, your kids are just little monsters. Like they've been working really hard to be, well behaved during the day, that when they get in the car after school or they get home after school and they're just like super grumpy and can't handle anything. Well, you know what would be a really great thing to do right then? And so instead of like lashing back out at your kids, just turn on some worship music. And that doesn't mean you're not saying, okay, guys, we're going to sing a worship song right now. Just turn it on in the background so that your own heart becomes more peaceful. And then over time, guess what happens in your family? God's peace then starts permeating those after school moments.
And they're turning on worship music, maybe on their own.
Exactly.
Which would be incredible.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So can you give us an example if somebody's like, okay, great, but I don't know how to say a short, easy prayer, or I don't know how to bless my kids. Give me an example of one prayer for like walking out the door before school, just like super short and easy. And then give me an example of like blessing your kids at bedtime. Putting you on the spot.
Sure. I would just pick a verse, right? Like there are lots of options. So the one that I usually use at bedtime is, may the Lord bless you and keep you, may make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you, may turn his face towards you and give you peace. And that's the priestly blessing from Numbers. You could also, write out, if your child is going out the door, may be strong and courageous, for you know that the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Or do not, you could start with the actual beginning of that verse, which is, do not be I have it as a song in my head, and so I can't say it.
Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed.
Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So,
Children's
I don't
Pastor
know
Christie
the verse
right there.
apart from the song. Yeah, so let's cut that part out. Just kidding. We're just grooving with Christy. So that would be a great one. That's Joshua 1:9. Or something about like, you are a light on a hill, you are the light of the world. Or maybe you are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works that God has prepared for you. So remember that as you go out, especially as your children are getting older, you are God's workmanship. And that word is translated in different ways in different Bibles. And I just love saying all the ways. You are God's workmanship. You are God's handiwork. You are God's masterpiece. It says in the NLT. I think the Greek word there is poema. So like, you are God's poem. Do not forget who you are as you go out into this world. You're his poem. You're his masterpiece. I think that's a pretty great way to send your kids out for the day. And now I want to do that.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, this is great. This is great.
Now I want to send my kids to school just so I could say that.
I'm going to use that one for sure. Okay. Those are really awesome examples. Can you tell us, because if people are like, yes, I need more of this, tell us where we can get your book. And then tell us about the other resources that you have available, because you have so much for parents that are it's just so easy and practical. So tell us everything that you have to offer, and then.
Well, how much time do you have? I'll keep it short. I promise. Okay. So Little Habits, Big Faith, How Simple Practices Help Your Family Grow in Jesus is available anywhere books are sold. If you go to my website, which is littleshootsdeeproots.com, I will, by the time this is out, have a link to it on my website. It's just, on my book page on my website, but it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and hopefully in your local bookstores, or you can ask your bookstore to bring it in. You can ask your library to bring it in. So that will not be a problem to find. It will be readily available. And I also have, this is actually my 6th book now, which is kind of exciting. So most of my other resources, in fact, all my other resources are actually for directly for use with your children. This is my only nonfiction, let's think about how to do this together as a family book. So I have the Fruitful book, which is, we talked a little bit about when we talked about the Holy Spirit. So it was about how the fruit of the Spirit is the fruit of the Holy Spirit and not a to-do list of things to do or be. So that one is a devotional book showing Christ as kind of the ultimate example of the fruit of the Spirit. And then I have a couple of picture books, Quinn's Promise Rock and Quinn Says Goodbye, on, helping our kids deal with anxiety or loss through Christ. And what else do I have? A mother-son prayer journal, which is a walk through the life and writings of David as you connect together with your son. So that's, if you have a elementary age son, that's a great way to connect kind of on a weekly basis. And I have a preschool devotional too, which actually is part of my Little Habits story. So my preschool devotional, I started writing when my oldest was 2, and it's something that we just did maybe 1 to 3 minutes per day. It was super short. And it was all I was really doing with him until kindergarten. And he went to a Christian kindergarten. And his Christian school teacher, who had been teaching at Christian school for a very long time, said to me, "Wow, he knows a lot about the Bible." And I thought, really? Because we've only been doing this thing that takes 2 minutes per day. And that was also part of my realizing that, little habits done regularly make a huge difference in your child's faith life. So that one is actually being re-released, I believe, this summer, and it's now called My First Devotional. So that should be super easy to find online.
I'll link all of it too, so that people can see easily.
And then I have lots of resources on my website. I won't tell you about any of them, but there's lots of Bible studies and all kinds of things on my website. So feel free to go over there and peruse it. Or if you're looking for something in specific, you can just email me and say, "Christy, this is what I'm looking for. Do you have it?" And if not, I'll point you to someone else, like Stephanie.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will make sure everyone can find everything super easily. But thank you so much for being on. I just love what you're doing. I love your heart for families. I'm just so grateful that you have spoken into my family so much. And I know that you will speak into all my listeners' families too. So thank you for being here again.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be on again. Thanks, Christy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you love Christy and her ideas for building faith habits in your kids. I can't promise you a lot when it comes to parenting, but I can promise you that if you commit to 1 or 2 small habits and stay consistent, you absolutely will see fruit from that. So start small. Choose something that's going to be easy for you and just go for it. And if you do this, please let me know how it goes. You can always reach out on social media or at steph@christianparenting.org. I would absolutely love to hear from you about this episode, the ideas you have for building habits in your kids, any other episodes, or any prayer requests. So please reach out anytime. May God bless you this week. May you remember that God will meet you where you are. He longs to be with you and be part of your everyday life. You don't have to do so much. You don't have to strive. Just draw onto Him and He will draw onto you. Thank you so much for listening to the Christian Parenting Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you love this podcast, would you please consider leaving a review and sharing it with a friend? This is the best way to reach more people and encourage even more parents. Christian Parenting is a donor-funded ministry, and we rely on friends like you to keep podcasts like this going. So to find out more about Christian Parenting and to make a donation, head over to christianparenting.org or at christianparenting_org on Instagram. Thank you again. See you next week.
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your sites will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.